Hello everyone, so during this video we'll be learning how to draw a dragon, and while this sketch will basically be the character design of the armatured doll version of him, which we'll be making in the future.
Hello everyone, hope you're all doing well, and thank you for tuning into Moose Motion. Be sure to like the video if you enjoyed the content, comment below what you think, share with your friends, and perhaps consider subscribing if you're new, and be sure you have your post notifications turned on so you don't miss any of the new content. Anyway, thank you for your support, it's highly appreciated.
So obviously initially you don't need a whole lot to start this project out, just a blank piece of paper and a pencil. I personally like to use mechanical pencils because it keeps that nice consistent edge the entire time, and I usually like to have a little scrap piece of paper underneath my hand so that way when I'm dragging my hand across the piece of paper, I'm not smudging out any of my previous work. Now that little scrap piece of paper may not be necessary at the very beginning of your drawing process, but it generally is probably a good habit to just kind of get into and always have that thing around because, well, the oil on your hands can cause major problems and smudge a lot of things and create just a big mess of the art piece that you've been working on for hours, so I generally just have the habit of making sure that it's always kind of there, and it's just, one thing that you don't have to worry about while you're working on something else. Now, generally speaking, when you're doing a drawing too, one thing I recommend is having a good reference drawing as well, and, well, I admit when I kind of went into this project, I had seemingly no idea what I really wanted to do with it, other than I wanted a dragon, and I didn't want to base it off anyone else's imagination other than my own, so there was a lot of experimenting kind of at the beginning here with various different noses as well as wing patterns, and it took a little bit to just kind of get things down, but I guess that's part of character design and why we're kind of sketching things out instead of just sculpting right away. Now that you got the basic shape of whatever it is you're, drawing, in this case it's a dragon, usually that's kind of what I like to do is get the basic shape down and then kind of start working the bigger details and then working my way down from there, essentially. Just kind of to avoid overworking the piece to a certain degree, because in the past I've, gone a little bit too intense with some of the details really early on, and then just kind of hard to keep track of things. It's just a lot easier to kind of keep things basic at the beginning, get your essential shapes down, and then tie in what you kind of want in from there, because it's just a lot easier to kind of, keep things clean, and that's a big thing for when you're drawing. I like to, not spend most of my time with the eraser and more of the time with the pencil. Now, that all being said, I must admit I don't spend a whole lot of time drawing, unfortunately. I wish I kind of spent more time drawing, but unfortunately I have a really difficult time trying to get good camera angles with a iPhone, and in 2023 I do plan on probably getting some more, upgrades for equipment to make things just a little bit better on the quality scale. And, perhaps we'll do some more drawing if this actually does half decently well. And, personally, I'm not a huge fan of, drawing organic objects, say, monsters and creatures. It's generally out of my comfort zone to a certain degree, especially this one, because usually what I draw is cars, and I'm pretty sure that's what most of my people most of my followers here recognize me for, is a lot of the automobile stuff working on. But I just kind of had a itch that only a pencil would, scratch, so I felt like doing a character design for a dragon would be fun, and, I personally thought at the beginning it wasn't going to take me a whole lot of time, but, like most of the projects on this channel, that definitely did not work out that way. However, it definitely was worth the extra time and effort that I put in, but, part of me was kind of going, oh, I sculpt things, that's way more challenging than drawing, this will be easy and quick, and, that definitely bit me in the butt, to say the very least. Anyway, so back to some more drawing tips. So at this point in the project, we've pretty much got down the basic sketch of what we actually want after, playing around with many lines and experimenting to a degree what we want our character to look like. And then, once you basically finally got that all down, in this case it took me a little longer than expected, you can basically start the next step, which is, going over your entire drawing again, basically making sure all of your lines stick out nice and neat, because, when you get on to the next steps, which is adding shading, coloring, and all those various other things, you want to make sure your lines are fairly dark and, stick out a little bit in comparison to, just a sketch, because, then you start coloring things in, and it doesn't really stick out as much as you would like. You're going to lose a lot of details and a lot of hours worth of work, which is just not exactly very encouraging, so this step is kind of tedious because you just drew everything, but is very important in the long run if you're going to make, a full colored drawing. So now that the main character design is basically out of the way, I'm going to work a little bit more on the background, making it a little bit more, well, visually appealing overall. So once I'm done drawing the horns here, we're going to move on to drawing a little tree. Now I'm going to give you some tips on how to draw a little tree because it's actually fairly easy as long as you actually know, well, a few small little tricks like I do. Now, basically the trick for drawing trees is kind of weird. For a standard, well, tree, we're not talking essentially like a spruce or anything fancy kind of like that. We're basically going to draw like a kind of an awkward looking Y to start with, and well, basically every branch you do off from there is going to be a Y or some sort of variation of a Y. So basically just split it off into a bunch of different little Y patterns and make them into, well, either branches or a trunk, and then draw little brush things on top, and there you go. That's basically how you draw a tree. At least that's how I draw trees. Now, for the rocks here at the bottom, I don't necessarily have any tried and true method for drawing a rock, so to speak, other than depending on the type of rock. In this case, it's kind of like a big cliff that we're working on, so a lot of the things along the edge are going to be a little bit more crumbly and probably a little bit more rough around the edges in comparison to, let's say, a smooth boulder. However, I did do a couple of those off to the side just for, well, aesthetic, to make sure things aren't quite all the same and it looks like it's an actual natural environment with different things as opposed to all just kind of being the same object, because that looks like a little bit more man-made, and I'm trying to kind of go for realism to a certain degree here. However, a lot of my stuff generally kind of ends up a little bit more cartoony than I would like, but I make cartoons, so at the same time too, I think that's probably somewhat beneficial. And I kind of remember going over the dragon design to a degree, thinking in my head, going, you have to make this into a stop motion doll, so don't make things too elaborate, which is sometimes a little painful on the, well, drawing aspect, because obviously I don't have the same limitations as clay, but that's what the whole premise of this drawing is. It's a character design, so we're going to make things just a little bit easier on ourselves, but at the same time too, may as well have some fun and make a half-decent art piece while we're doing it. So what that basically entitles is me being really picky and going over the, well, the very first sketch was kind of rough, mainly because I had no idea where I was going and there was too many erase lines and I didn't like it, so I did an entire tracing of my drawing using a projector. So slightly cheating here, but it was mainly because I wanted to actually have a half-decent clean piece to work with, especially for the coloring stage. So now I basically have two dragon drawings, one good copy and one bad copy. So that's one thing you can actually kind of do if, well, perhaps you have a really nice art piece that you've worked on for quite a few hours and, well, you kind of butchered it, unfortunately, with one area. You can basically kind of save your entire project by kind of, well, just tracing it. It's not technically a tracing at that point if you've already drawn it in the first place, as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, if you comment below saying I cheated, I don't particularly care, because I didn't. At least in my set of rule books, I don't think tracing a drawing that you have done originally is really cheating. Yeah, I don't know. This is kind of a gray area. We're just going to say I didn't cheat. Now we're going to venture away from that gray area, so to speak, mainly because, well, there's no gray actually anywhere on this dragon apart from the pencil lines, I would guess. But I kind of wanted to go for a classic, well, fire-breathing dragon look for this guy in particular, so I decided to kind of keep things a little more retro with the color, just kind of keep them, well, green and yellow, nothing too fancy, and, well, making things a little easier on the sculpting department too, because that's another thing you kind of have to remember when you're, well, sculpting things into a plasticine doll, that chances are if you're going to be mixing and matching a bunch of different colors into each other, it's just going to end up being a bit of a nightmare in the animation process. So do yourself the favor and try to keep things a little bit more base colors and solid as possible without having to do too much custom mixing, because that also can lead into a whole different library of different problems, which, well, we'll probably get into another time. This is a drawing tutorial, not a sculpting tutorial. Now, as far as tips go for, well, drawing, at this point, we're basically done the whole drawing aspect, and we're coloring, obviously, so obviously stick between the lines. That's probably the upmost and foremost important rule when it comes to coloring, because you don't want to mix things into areas that you obviously don't want, because then it looks really bad and it looks like some 5-year-old will probably have drawn it, unless you are 5 and that's what you're going for. Congratulations, but unfortunately I don't think that's going to fly for someone that's an adult posting on YouTube, so stay between the lines. But at any rate, what I generally like to do also for coloring to make sure that I don't press too hard on the actual paper, causing tears or any other unwanted blemishes, I like to layer things up kind of in stages of 2 or 3. I did it in 3 layers, however, I kind of saved you guys the pain on the 3rd layer because you don't really actually see anything happening at that point, especially on the time lapse I noticed, so I just kind of deleted that footage. Basically, yeah, go over the entire area with whatever color it is you want with a nice, well, light press. Don't press very hard, just get the basic color in there, and then 2nd layer you kind of use a little bit more force, not too hard, just kind of gently press in there and get in between the corners with a nice sharp edge a little bit more, and then fill in, well, the rest of it with the same color. Just kind of layering it on bit by bit. Takes a lot longer than normal, but in the long run it's going to save you some time if, well, say you end up tearing your piece, and, well, I'm speaking from past, projects on that one where I've spent literally 10 to 12 hours on something, and then I just went way too hard with the coloring, and it's just, be gentle. There's no rush. Because you basically stand the chance of losing several hours if you decide to just try and save yourself a little bit of time with coloring, and honestly, it's sometimes a step that I've always kind of hated doing, and, well, in recent years, I've enjoyed it a lot more, but in the past, it's one of those steps that I kind of used to end up regretting because I was always scared I was going to essentially ruin my piece. Now, one other thing you can do, too, to help avoid all of that having to press too hard, because I noticed, generally speaking, it's the cheaper pencil crayons that I was usually having that problem with. I now buy Prisma pencil crayons, which are kind of expensive, unfortunately, but that being said, they are much softer graphite than your conventional ones, and it's just way nicer to work with. Like, it is a huge night and day difference to actually have a half-decent set of pencil crayons, basically. For one, you don't have to press as hard. 2, they also blend into each other, so you can kind of mix and match and make custom colors or layer things up in different unique ways to create highlights and lowlights and shading. So personally, I love these things. Unfortunately, I'm by no means sponsored by them, so I kind of should probably make that a quick disclaimer. But if you want to get into, well, serious pencil drawing and, well, don't have a set of Prisma colors yet, you probably should go get some. And also, you remember those nightmares, the 5-year-old comment I made, basically, where if you happen to have a mistake, well, good news on that, too. Prisma colors are actually somewhat erasable. Like, it's not entirely a guarantee it's going to clean it up as nice as you would like, but it's definitely a hell of a lot better than some of those cheap ones, where basically if you veered out a little bit, tough luck. It's now there forever. And seeing how I was on the topic of, well, layering colors up with pencil crayons not that long ago, I may as well, bring up the fact that the wings are probably the best example for that, because, well, you can kind of see at the beginning they start off as a weird, chalky yellow color there with the first layer, and then upon the 2nd layer, pressing just a slightly, more amount, not too much more, you get that nice bright yellow at that point, making a world of a difference, and, well, definitely layering them on makes it a lot, more work, so to speak, but less work in the long run, because there's just kind of guaranteed to be less mistakes. And, well, I'm pretty much all for having more creative freedom at the end of the day, and, well, there's enough things in life that kind of suck having to do as is, so I try to make this as efficient as possible because, well, that means in the long run I have more creative freedom to play around with, well, either pencil crayons, dolls, stop motion, so yeah. It's quite a lot of fun, can be a lot of work, but at the same time, too, I think it's well worth it in the end, and I can't appreciate you enough, the viewer, for actually joining me on this adventure. It's definitely been an interesting one for the last 3 years. I must admit I was very, very bad for never finishing projects at the beginning of this, and, well, now I basically have to because I have an audience. So I can't thank you all enough for being the inspiration for me, and hopefully it's offered a bit of an inspiration for you. And if it has, and perhaps you're new here, well, you can start off by hitting that subscribe button and, well, joining us along this stop-motion adventure. And if you're already a subscriber, I want you to know that I highly appreciate your support, and you can show your love and support by smacking that like button, and or perhaps leaving a nice comment below, and or even doing a request, because, well, the dragon was a request by a subscriber, and, well, there's definitely a lot more projects to go, unfortunately, but I will do my best to try and keep up. It's not exactly easy, but yeah, I'm a one-man army, so I'll I'll push myself to get it done eventually. It might take some time, but don't worry, we'll get there. Now it's time to the glamour shots of the dragon drawing, and well, be sure to tune in next week where we'll be making a 3D version of this, well, 2D drawing. Anyway, you made it this far in the video. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the content, comment below what you think, share with your friends, and perhaps consider subscribing if you're new. Anyway, that's enough from me. Till next time, take it easy.